Okay, hello everyone. Thank you for joining Pre-Health Shadowing, an international student-led, women-led, minority-led, and nonprofit for medical advancement. So we do have closed captions to accommodate students of all abilities and needs. If you have any questions, feel free to email us at info@prehealthshadowing.com and make sure to save us as a contact to keep us out of your spam folder. Definitely feel free to follow us on Instagram at Pre-Health Shadowing and join our email list to keep up to date with all pre-health shadowing activities. We have students joining us from all over the world at pre-health shadowing sessions, so feel free to put where you are in the chat. I am located in Seattle, Washington. Are you interested in being a part of pre-health shadowing? We currently have positions open for our PHS initiative, Transfer to Healthcare. We are looking for team members, or PHS has a lot of team member positions opened. You can feel free to visit our website and you can apply on there. Next, PHS does run off of donations and students' time. So if you do have the ability to donate, you can scan this QR code and find information about how to do so. Next, a little bit about Transfer to Healthcare, a new PHS initiative. We are an organization that focuses on community college students and their mission to transfer into a career in healthcare. We would like to support all these students, and as you can see from these statistics, we'd like to close the gap and aid community college students pursue their dream career in healthcare. We do have an existing leadership team for Transfer to Healthcare, and you can see our leadership team here. We have Nina, our founder and CEO of Pre-Health Shadowing, Jane, our vice president, and my name is Natalie. I'm the lead of Transfer to Healthcare. And we also have Denise, our assistant lead to healthcare. We would also have some positions open, so your name could be on the slide as well. Today is going to be our first workshop, and it is Transferring to Healthcare, the basics of a successful pre-med journey. Make sure to type your questions in the chat, and we will be monitoring the chat. And at the end of the speakers session, we will have a Q&A where you can ask any questions you would like. Also, make sure if you're able to have your camera on. It definitely enhances the session, and it's always nice to see friendly faces. Okay, I'll go ahead and pass it over to our speaker, Dean.
Hi, thank you so much for that introduction. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. If I can, there we go. All right. So thank you again. I want to thank Pre-Health Shadowing for having me out here. As we kind of talked about in the last slide, community college students in medicine is something that I feel are at a lack of resources, and they don't have all the support that necessarily students from a full four-year institution has. And so I kind of wanted to address some of the problems and some of the benefits that community college students actually get from going to community college in this PowerPoint. And so transferring to healthcare as a community college student is going to be the topic of this talk. So just a quick background on who am I. My name is Dean Midori. I'm a second-year medical student at the California University of Science and Medicine in Colton, California. I was an alumni of Santa Ana Community College for 4 years, and then I transferred to the University of California, Irvine for my last 2 years, and I didn't take a gap year and went to medical school after. So you're a community college student and you've decided that you want to go to medical school. There's 3 big categories that we really want to target here as you start your educational career. And the first being is going to be your stats, your coursework, which is going to be your GPA and your MCAT. Those are going to kind of get you the foot in the door in any application process. And so you kind of want to make sure that you have those really solid if you can. The next one would be your extracurricular activities, usually a combination of research and medical experience. And finally, the last part of the application will be the actual application process, which is particularly straining for community college students, especially if they don't want to take gap years, which I'll go over a little later. So I think a question I get from a lot of the community college students I mentor who are just starting is, what major should they be? Because, you know, in community college, you hear a lot through the grapevine about different things and different plans that other students do. So you hear a lot about, you know, maybe chemistry major, a biology major, sometimes psychology. And I think in my personal opinion, the major that you should be something that you're really honestly just interested and passionate about. So you're going to have to take the required courses anyways. You know, you're going to have to take OChem, you're going to have to take biochem and the math and the biology. So those other classes, those electives you're going to take as part of your major should be something that you just really enjoy and something that, you know, you can, just have fun being in. Med schools don't tend to really differentiate GPA from classes to classes. And so, for example, I was a bio major myself, but I did a lot of coursework in marine bio and freshwater limnology just because I had a really big passion for it. And at no part in my application process were they going, oh my God, you know, you took freshwater limnology. That's not immunology. It's not a, you know, a hard class. They were actually, you know, more likely to talk to me about it because it shows you, you know, you kind of ventured out and were well rounded. So choosing something that you're interested and passionate about is, I think, definitely the way to go. As long as, of course, you're getting your required core courses done. And so speaking of those core courses, what classes do you want to get done by the time you apply to medical school? So the ones that are most likely required by pretty much every medical school are going to be a year of bio with lab, a year of gen chem with lab, a year of OChem with lab, a year of physics with lab, a year of English, and 1 semester of biochemistry. Biochemistry isn't always required, but most schools are kind of picking up their requirement for biochemistry, so it's best to just assume it's required. And then the classes that are kind of variably required, some schools might require like a year of math, whether that's calculus or stats. Some might just require a stats course, the social sciences, so psychology and sociology, and genetics. And with these variably required classes, my recommendation is to really, if you can get as many of them out of the way possible, it really makes the process a lot easier, because the last thing you want is when you get to that application process, you know, find a school that you really vibe with and you think that you would be a great applicant for, and you don't apply because you didn't take statistics. So the more of these classes that you can get out of the way in your undergrad career, the better you're going to set yourself up in the long run. So before we get into kind of a general schedule for community college students, the quick disclaimer I want to make is that the schedule I've made is for a student who spends 2 years in community college, 2 years in their upper division, you know, university, and then doesn't take a gap year, which is a crazy hectic schedule. I mean, like I said earlier myself, I took 6 years in my undergrad before I even, you know, applied to medical school. The idea being that this will kind of just show you the general landmarks of when things can be. And if you're spending an extra year in community college or an extra year at your university, you know, it kind of spreads out your time and it would be probably better for your mental health. Great. So let's talk about year one. So year one, you know, you first start off, you want to kind of, you know, take those core classes that you're done, and it really helps to find your extracurricular activities and your research as early on as possible. So if you can find any shadowing, EMT, medical scribe, or any of these listed on the right, and start to get into that, it would be super helpful in the long run, because they do take a little while to get set up for yourself. I want to point out here that you can apply to community college scholarships at all times. You know, most often community colleges have bulk scholarship applications that students can apply to, and you know, at least in my personal experience, students don't really tend to apply to them. I personally won a scholarship for parents in STEM, even though I don't have a kid, because there weren't enough applicants, you know, so it was me and a couple other parents in STEM, showing that students aren't actually applying to all these scholarships. And so even if you don't think you're a good applicant, there's no harm in trying, and it can definitely help. And it's at this point that I really want to highlight one of the biggest benefits, I think, of community college, which is in year one, you can really start to form close relationships with your teachers. So talking about letters of rec, when I was at community college, you know, the classes are smaller, 25 to 50, and the teachers who are at community college usually are there because they want to teach, not because they're there to do research. Whereas when you transfer to your, you know, full institution, you'll have in a biochem class, I had, I think, 400 in my biochem class, and the teacher was focused on her research. So it's hard to make those personal connections, where it's a lot easier in community college. So in community college, I really recommend, you find a class that you're interested in, you should participate, go to office hours, try your best in the class, and that will start to build a relationship with the teacher. And even afterwards, you can ask that professor, if you feel really close to them, oh, is there any work that you needed help with? Are you doing any research, or would your class benefit from a TA? And so those things really help to form really close, real bonds with those professors that can serve as your mentors moving on. And the letters of recommendation they write will be amazing, because they really know you, and they really care about you over the course of these times. And so keeping in touch, again, is super important. But this is one of the biggest benefits of community college, in my opinion, is essentially the access you have to these mentors and teachers. And so I would really take advantage of it while you have that opportunity. And so while you're building those relationships, I would, get along with these teachers, work with them all throughout community college. And then before I left, I went up to all the teachers who I felt really close with, who I thought would write me a letter of rec. And I just asked them, I said, hey, I'm not applying to medical school right now, but in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, I'm thinking about applying to medical school. At that point, would you be comfortable writing me a letter of recommendation? And I think this is a really good way to start it, because it alleviates that stress of you wondering if they're going to say yes or no, because you've really asked them a lot far in advance. They're not going to work on it now, obviously, because you're 1, 2, 3 years out. But just kind of having that peace of mind, knowing this professor is comfortable writing a letter of recommendation to you. And then later, when you're ready to apply, at least 1 to 3 months in advance, you'd send them an email like, hey, I want to thank you so much for your support. Hopefully you've kept in touch with them. But just kind of, reminding them about the letter of rec, and then giving them the actual information of when to submit it there. But so this is one of the big benefits that I really urge people in community college to really work on, because when I was in my, when I was at UCI, a lot of students were struggling getting certain letters of rec. Maybe they didn't have a non-science letter of rec. And so the only thing they could do was to take another class at UCI and try their hardest to get close to the teachers, but it's a lot easier at community college. And so this is just this is actually one of my emails asking for a letter of rec. And I didn't provide really an outline for this, because when you ask for a letter of rec, it's going to be really personable. It's if you know this teacher really well, your letter of rec is going to be different than if I just put a template up here for you. And so, this letter is a little more personal, because this was my first mentor. He helped me a lot with everything. I was really appreciative of everything he did. And I know that he knows everything we've done together. He doesn't need my CV and my letter of intent. But if I had a professor who maybe only knew me for, a semester or something, then I might want to, go more professional and say, here, I've attached a CV and a letter of purpose just to help you out. So this just kind of is very variable based on the professor that you're asking for a letter of rec from. So going into the second semester, again, you're going to just kind of be continuing most of the stuff you started in your first semester, but this is the next really big thing that I think is super important for community college students, is looking for summer research opportunities. So I want to take time and stop right now and just kind of emphasize that I think that the number one biggest thing that set me apart as a community college student was the fact that I got into research as a community college student. There weren't very many other community college students doing research. And so on, every application, every scholarship, it was this really big thing that kept helping me and kept snowballing. And so I'm going to provide a couple ways where I think community college students can get into research, starting from easiest to hardest. Hopefully the easiest ones will work for you. So summer research opportunities. There are a bunch of schools that have summer research programs that are specific for community college students. And so some example ones that are near me are on the right that I was familiar with. Obviously, if you're in a different part of the country, you might want to look up your area, but these programs offer about 6 to 10 week research opportunities for community college students to come and learn how to conduct research. And it can be apprehensive for certain students. They feel a little bit of imposter syndrome, like I'm not prepared for that. I don't think I'll be able to do it. And I want to stop and emphasize that you should definitely do it regardless of how prepared you feel. I talked to my teacher and she was like, you should do this research. And I was like, I think I would be terrible and I don't want to waste my summer. And she was like, no, do it. And I didn't. It was one of the greatest things that I've done. and they teach you pretty much everything you need to know there. They're just looking for someone who's really willing to learn. The lab I joined was biochemistry, and I had only taken Gen Chem 1, so I knew nothing about it. And this is a great way to get access, continuing access to a research lab, because after you spent that 6 to 10 weeks, as long as you know, put in a lot of really good effort and you've been really respectful to your teachers and stuff, then you can ask them if they would be comfortable with you staying on and volunteering, or even if you have to go like back home, maybe doing some research remote. So they really devoted time to training you. And so losing you is kind of a loss. And they're most likely going to say, you know, we'd love to have you and keep you. And so that's probably the easiest way, I'd say, for a community college student to get into research, because it's a pre-existing pathway kind of set up for you already. When you're looking for those, there are also some research programs that are open to all students, all undergrad, and not just community college students. So you're also welcome to apply to those. They're just a little bit, they're probably going to have a larger application pool, and they might not be as easy to find. And then another way is, like I said, the mentor thing is really big at community college. You can ask your mentors at community college if they know of any opportunities or any colleagues that are working on anything or anything you can assist with. And I mean, you know, in science, these are usually PhDs. They have a lot of connections to research and stuff. So if they, you know, if it's a mentor that you're really close with, they'll probably be really likely to help set you up with this. And so the last kind of way that I want to talk about getting into research is cold emailing. And I think this is going to be most useful when you're transferring from your community college to your upper division university. And it's essentially because you're sending an email to a lab that doesn't know you. And so it's kind of difficult. It's kind of a risky, you know, take by them. But if you're a community college student, say you're transferring to UCI, you can kind of, you know, set the basis, say, hey, I'm a transfer student. I'll be attending your school. I'd really love to work in your lab because I've been looking at your research and, you know, all this stuff that's on the email, but kind of, you know, mentioning that you're a transfer student and that you're, you know, ready to devote the next 2 years of your schooling, 3 years, however long you're going to spend at your new institution is kind of important, because they don't really want, you know, it takes about 6 months to like get trained, get, you know, approved and start actually learning how to do things in lab. But so cold emailing, I'd say, would probably work best at an institution you're transferring to, because if you just start cold emailing your local universities, they're less likely to say yes. But so that's a really great way as a transfer student to get into new research at your new university. So going on to the second year, again, continuing those core classes and your extracurricular activities, you want to apply to transfer. And again, you apply to those scholarships every year because it's free money. In your second semester of your second year, kind of what I said earlier, you want to begin to ask your mentors if they would write you letters of rec when you're ready. And what I talked about earlier, inquiring about research at your new institution. Some institutions actually have summer research programs for specifically freshmen and students transferring in, but it's not always made evident, I think, by school admissions boards. So you should really take a strong proactive role into kind of looking for these things, even though it can be kind of tough because there's so much changing for you. It'll really help you out in the long run. And this is where we're starting to get into one of the hard kind of speed bumps of community college, which is if you're not going to take a gap year, you need to kind of start reviewing for your MCAT now. And that's going to be because here in year 3, in the second semester, you're going to have to take that MCAT if you don't want to gap year. And so in your first semester, you know, you're going to take biochemistry because you'll need to know that for the MCAT. But, you know, kind of getting used to your new institution and looking around for any clubs or opportunities that interest you. But this second semester of your third year is going to be, I think, a really big challenge for community college students, because there's so much emphasis on transferring and getting to learn your institution that a lot of students in my experience or in my cohort, I felt were kind of unprepared for this sharp, you know, change where they had to take the MCAT, and if they didn't want to take a gap year, they had to, you know, submit their applications this summer. And a lot of my cohort really didn't want a gap year because we had spent 5, 6, 7 years in our undergrad career. And so talking about the MCAT, these are the subjects that are going to be tested on it. Okay, we have intro bio, gen chem, ochem, and physics. Those all I recommend if you can taking the MAC community college. The ochem and physics can get a little more difficult at upper division just because you don't tend to have, that it's a class of 500. So, you don't have access to professors if your school is really big all the time, and it's kind of variable. Whereas if you're comfortable at your community college, it makes it a little easier. So all those in green can be taken, before you transfer. Psych and sociology can really be taken anywhere to kind of lighten up your course load a little bit, because the intro classes are not, too challenging. Biochemistry is a really tough class that a lot of pre-med struggle with, that you'll most likely take after transferring. And then the cars section, there's no real coursework for that section. It's kind of just practice. So those are the subjects that'll be on the MCAT. And you kind of want to aim for a 510, usually is what most students aim for to be competitive, above a 510. The MCAT average score is between 504 and 505. But the med school application process is really kind of personal. You obviously want to go for the best stats you can possible. But I use this graph a lot of times to help try to maybe show students what they need to work on or alleviate pain. This is an acceptance from 2016. And it just kind of shows if you're a student who has a 4.0, they have about a 65% acceptance rate with 506s, or vice versa. If you're a student who got above a 517 on the MCAT, they have about a 50% acceptance rate with a 3.2 to a 3.4. So, if you're deficient in one area, maybe your GPA wasn't that good in community college, the MCAT can be a way to address that. Or if you have an amazing GPA, maybe you don't necessarily need a 519 on the MCAT or a 520. But again, you want to go for the best stats you can possible. And the issue is that the application cycle will open up in May, and then you'll be able to submit in June. So ideally, you want to have everything perfect and set and done before you submit, which means that you'll likely have to take the MCAT anywhere from January to April, and that's very, very fast. That's why I really recommend not sticking on to this, 4-year plan. Maybe take an extra year, take a gap year, because the MCAT's a huge monster, and you really need to devote time to it. Even me personally, I was set on this schedule to try to take it in April, and COVID has ended up with being delaying my MCAT. And if COVID didn't delay my MCAT, I would not have done well enough to get into my institution. So being, really prepared and really knowing what your schedule is going to be like is super important, especially as a community college student, because like I said, the MCAT and applications in your third year, if you don't want a gap year, it's really gonna put a lot of strain on you. But it's just something you should be aware of as you move forward in your career. And so these are a couple free MCAT resources that I used. Jack Weston is for free daily cars practice. Khan Academy is really good for videos when you want to kind of passively study, because you can burn out really easily when you're studying for the MCAT. Now, subreddits and message boards, I recommend. It just depends on, your type of personality. If you're someone who can really kind of ignore things that might put you down on a subreddit, and you can just kind of get the advice, totally do it. If you're someone who might be really influenced by a subreddit, I don't necessarily recommend going, because there were some times when I'd hop on a subreddit and I'd see someone being like, I got a 600 MCAT score and I didn't get in. And then I'd go, well, great, I'm never going to get in that. And so I personally didn't like it. So it's kind of just knowing what's best for you. There are a couple free MCAT practice tests, and those are going to be your most important tools when you're studying for the MCAT. And so I've linked one by Blueprint here. And last thing I want to talk about is Anki, because I didn't use Anki when I studied for the MCAT, and I think it would have been a game changer for specifically the psychology section. It's just a spaced repetition flashcard app that pretty much all medical students use once you get to medical school. And it helps you memorize things very, very efficiently, but it's a little non-intuitive to use at first. And so if you can learn Anki for the psychology section, I think it would really help improve your score if that's something you're struggling with. And then we get to year 4. And so in year 4, you're going to get interviews. It's at this point where, if you're kind of sticking to this timeline, I kind of recommend you take a breather and start to take just kind of some classes that interest you. I took like Greek mythology and freshwater limnology, stuff that wasn't going to kill me in the long run. And then, just keeping up with those extracurricular activities. and then you'll end up graduating after that. But yeah, so that's going to be kind of the general timeline of how it could go. I realize that it's really compacted. It can be stressful, but just knowing kind of the landmarks of when you need to do things and when things are happening can be really, really crucial for you as a community college student. And I think that, again, spreading this out over more than 4 years is super helpful, because one thing I talked about in my application cycle, my interviews, was I used to say all the time, like, oh, one of my flaws is like I need to work on time management and stuff like that. And it's kind of just a nothing thing that I said. And then I got to medical school and I was like, wow, I really needed to work on time management and mental health. So knowing, what your perfect schedule is going to be really important in this application. And so I think that's going to cover it for the general timeline for me in applying to community college, or applying to medical school as a community college student. If there are any questions or anything, I'm totally open to hear them. And yeah, I think that'll cover it for me. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you, Dean. We do have some questions. So one of them you kind of mentioned about taking classes before you transfer. Should you wait to take pre-med classes at 4-year college, or do them at community college, or should you just do whatever works best?
So sometimes you'll have to, this is of course just my opinion, but sometimes you'll have to kind of bite the bullet and take classes because it's what your schedule demands. My recommendation is, if you're doing great at community college and you've been acing every class you take, then you should probably take as many classes as you can that are going to be like transferable, of course, before transferring. So, I had really gotten into my groove as a student, so I took OChem and physics, and I felt like I was doing really well because I kind of knew, I knew some of the teachers already, and I knew a lot of the students, and I had a network there, versus I knew some students when they transferred and they would take OChem, they felt at a little bit of a disadvantage because people already had friends in study groups, and there were resources people were using, like old practice tests and stuff that they just didn't have access to because they had just gotten to school. And so if you can get those harder classes like physics and OChem out before you transfer, I really recommend it. If you don't, it's okay. I just think personally that was easier. And then it kind of alleviates your schedule a little bit too for some of those harder classes like biochemistry that you'll have to take later on.
Thank you. And our last question is, how can you get a letter of recommendation from a doctor or someone in healthcare to add to your application as a community college student?
Yeah, so I think for that, as a community college student, the most important thing in any really experience that you do is to just kind of go in with an open attitude and be ready to learn, be really willing, and keep, everything positive. And so in terms of getting like a medical letter of rec, if you're just around and you're putting in a lot of effort and showing in a lot of work, it's totally respectable, when you're leaving or at some point in the future when you just be like, hey, I was just wondering if you'd be, comfortable writing me a letter of recommendation. And if you've made a bond with any type of mentor here, they're totally going to say yes. It's definitely a super professional thing to ask, and they've been in your shoes. They've asked for their own letters of recs. So I think that just trying your best to help out, do whatever is necessary and form a bond with any type of mentor in any real situation you do is really going to help you a lot in the long run.
Great, thank you so much. We'll go ahead and go through our wrap up. So if you have a moment to reflect on the session and write what you may have learned, that would definitely help you out in the future. Here are a few questions that may help you reflect on what you learned. And also, if you want to submit those reflections, you can get some recognition on our PHS website blog and write about that in your application process and continue to work with us. Lastly, if you are interested in the position, just as a reminder, we are looking for team members, especially at Transfer to Healthcare, who are passionate about our mission. And our recording will be posted on our website. So if you did miss a session, please make sure to visit our website or our YouTube channel to rewatch the session. Make sure to catch our sessions every week, and next month In July, we will be having another transfer to healthcare workshop, and we will be having some shadowing sessions in the future. So definitely stay tuned for those. And we look forward to seeing you at our next workshop. Please make sure to reach out if you have any questions, or we will see you next time.